If you've ever heard different covers or different renditions of a song by different artists, you probably have noticed, wow, an arrangement makes a huge difference in my enjoyment and my feelings towards a song. So today we're going to be talking about 3 different ways and arrangement mistakes that can lead to losing your listeners and how to avoid them. So the first mistake, which is the most overarching mistake, if you get this right, this will go a long way, is just that the energy meter of the song is not going up or down. Now notice that I said the energy meter is going up or down. It doesn't need to be going up all the time. In fact, really, when it comes to music, relativity is often the most important thing. What you really need is that your song is constantly either moving up or down, and it can be super gradual. It doesn't need to be sudden. You don't want to be flatlining though. Something I'd encourage you to do to sort of test your song for this is literally get out a sheet of paper. Get a pen, start on the left part of the paper, and literally draw a line. And as you feel the energy of the song going up, move up. And then if it jumps up, jump up. And then go down when it comes down. And make sure that your song is never really stagnant at any given period of time. Now it's okay to have bigger jumps and then more subtle increases and decreases. That is all totally okay. Different songs can sometimes fit better with different things. Sometimes it's best to have really big jumps sometimes. Sometimes you don't really want the big jumps and you just want subtle growth over time. Sometimes you want more ups and downs. Sometimes you want more ups. But regardless of that, you do want the energy to be constantly moving in a direction. You don't want it totally stagnant. And beyond just testing to see if you have this problem, I think our next tip really contains what is key to making sure that you are actually fixing this issue. And that second problem is that you aren't adding new interesting elements or changing up the elements of the song to keep things interesting. So there are so many ways, really an infinite amount of ways that you can change up the song, change up different parts. You can do things like pass off an instrument part from one instrument to another. You see this very often in classical music where early on the cellos will sort of carry the melody, but later in the song the violins will take it over. Things like that can all be subtle changes that you can make that make a huge difference in the song. The most obvious way to change things up is simply adding a new part though. So for example, you can obviously just add a guitar part, right? Maybe you get to the second half of your first verse and you add a little lead guitar lick, or maybe you add a piano part that's playing arpeggios, or maybe you add an organ that's just sort of playing chords. What's key here is you want to make sure you're making subtle changes over time often. You want to make sure you never really go more than 8 measures without making some subtle change, and it can be really subtle. Again, subtle is okay, but you should be making some change. Honestly, I'd recommend shooting for more like once every 4 measures, having something change, even if it's super subtle, like slightly changing what the part is doing, or by adding an instrument that sort of is in the background of the mix and not super obvious to hear. Now this is all about adding interesting parts, but interesting is something that's honestly very relative. So for example, something that might not be very interesting is adding yet another electric guitar part to a song that currently has about 6 electric guitar parts doing different things, especially if that electric guitar has a similar effect or a similar sound as the other guitars. But if you added a piano when everything else in the song was basically electric bass and electric guitars and hard-hitting drums, that piano might actually be interesting relative to that song. Similarly, even changing up sort of like, for example, taking something from one genre and sort of putting it into another genre, whether that be using an instrument that's unconventional in the style of song that you are playing, or something that's even more subtle, just using an instrument in a way that it's usually used in a different genre, but it's not necessarily an instrument your genre wouldn't normally have. It's just that you are playing the part in a style that is really reminiscent of a different genre than the genre you're currently playing. Let me explain. While a double bass might not be something that's very different in, say, a rock song, as rock songs often do have things like string quartets to sort of add to the grandioseness of the song, it would be different to be using an acoustic bass, an upright bass, as the actual bass part for a rock song, because usually it's going going to be an electric bass guitar. Or if you're writing an EDM song and usually your leads are probably going to be synth parts, but you actually bring somebody in to play an electric guitar lead part, for the genre of EDM, that's actually going to probably stand out a little bit and be pretty different. And then for the previous point about using instruments in genres where they aren't normally seen, using something like steel guitar in a rock song rather than where we're used to seeing it, which is in country. Or maybe using a harmonica in a song that isn't a folk song. Or if you're a singer-songwriter style that usually goes pretty acoustic with things, maybe adding a simple synth will be something that just makes it different enough to make it quite intriguing and interesting. Now we could dive in and really talk about this and discuss this for hours probably, but the main thing to keep in mind here is that with music, like with most art, there is this constant tension between people wanting things to sound right and to feel right, but they also don't want it to be predictable and uninspired sounding. And really the line between those two is quite thin. So be sure to try to really go down the middle on this. You don't want to go so far that people are like, what even is that? Is that even music? But you also don't want to be so same old where there's nothing different about your music. What I try to do is really shoot for the area where people can't quite put their finger on what makes it different. They just notice something is different. And maybe when it's pointed out to them, then they'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't really even notice that. That makes sense now. But it's not so obvious that people hear it and they're like, oh, he's trying to do this, or oh, well, that's very different. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, I just personally prefer that area where it's something where it's subtle and you sort of get to explore and discover how it's different over time rather than sort of hitting people in the face with, look how different this is. But again, this is to each their own. Do whichever makes you feel most fulfilled as an artist. So now on to possible problem area 3, why your song might lose your listeners. And this is one that I like to harp on and that I think people often really don't explore, but I want you to try exploring, and that is changing up the song structure. So often the trap we can fall into is following the same song structure over and over and over again. And we might not even know why. We just think to ourselves, oh, well, a song has a first verse and then a chorus and then a second verse and then a chorus and then a bridge and then a chorus. And then we think, oh, we're so different and crazy when we like throw an extra chorus at the end or have a final half verse that happens at the end of the final chorus. Or maybe we have a third verse that comes after the bridge. Maybe we have a pre-chorus. And those are all certainly subtle things we can do to change it up. And I think those things are great things to do to not just fall right into that verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, but we can even go a step further. You can try things like writing a song that has 2 different bridges that actually follow each other right in a row, where you have a chorus and then you have a first bridge and then there's a second bridge before going back to the chorus or going back to another verse. Or you can do something where you actually have a song that doesn't even have a chorus at all. It just sort of has an A section repeated or a verse repeated depending on how you want to see it. Another thing you can do, something that I like to talk about a lot because it's one of my favorite things to do to a song, is to add what I like to call a finale. So just to briefly explain what a finale is, basically a finale is technically a coda, but it's a section that, as far as roles, is sort of a hybrid between a chorus and a bridge. So a chorus tends to function as the highlight of the song, the thematic highlight, and also the emotional highlight of the song specifically, but it also is a part that is repeated. A bridge, on the other hand, tends to be the one thing that just like changes everything up and never comes back, right? The verse will come back, even if the lyrics don't come back, the melody will come back, and the general arrangement of it will probably come back. Even if the arrangement adjusts, it's still going to be the same chords probably. And the chorus usually comes back exactly as is over and over again. But a bridge is something that only happens once and then is done, usually. So a finale is sort of named after sort of a grand finale when it comes to, say, a concert. But really, it's meant to be a hybrid of those two, where it functions as the actual highlight of the song, where you think the chorus is the highlight of the song, but then there's this final section that happens that's even bigger bigger, even more emotionally resonant than the chorus that came before it. So you thought you already heard the highlight, but wait, there's more, but in a good way. But also, like a bridge, it only happens once and then is over, which can help make the listener want more, because sometimes by the end of the third chorus, listeners are like, yeah, I'm ready for the song to be over. 3 times for the chorus was enough. 4 times for the chorus was enough. And that was the highlight of the song. I already heard it 3-4 times. I'm good. But the finale allows you to leave the listener like, wow, the best part of the song was right there at the end. It happened once and now it's over. I kind of want to re-listen to the song. Not to mention that this gives you a bunch of different storytelling options. This really allows you to sort of finish telling the story in the climactic ending of the song, so that sort of, when it comes to the plot element of a song, if you have a first verse that sort of sets up the story, and you have a second verse, and the second verse sort of is the rising action, and maybe the bridge continues that, or maybe you don't have a bridge, but then the finale can be something that brings everything together. Maybe it brings the main theme of the chorus together with the story, bring it all together in this giant climax at the end of your song, and then boom, song is over, listeners are left wanting more, your story is complete, and everything is awesome. So anyway, all to say that the finale or some other song section where you sort of take elements of different song sections and jobs of different song sections and combine them in different ways or go in different orders than is conventional, try subtle different things to change, try different parts. That can be something that really makes a song shine and really makes it something very, very different. So in summary, I think the 3 main arrangement mistakes that we can make that will lose our listeners is 1, to not keep the energy meter moving up and down, keeping it stagnant. We don't want to do that. Mistake number 2 is that we're not adding interesting elements or changing up the elements to keep it interesting throughout the arrangement. And the third is that we don't keep the song structure fresh. Be sure to not underestimate changing up the song structure. Don't take verse, chorus, bridge, chorus for granted. Be sure to think about different song parts, change it up, and do whatever fits the lyrics and the storytelling of your song best. If this video was helpful to you, be sure to drop a like, and if you're interested in diving deeper with me on songwriting, be sure to download my free guide on 10 different ways to start writing a song. It gives you 5 ways from a lyrical perspective and 5 ways from a musical perspective to get started songwriting. I think it's really important to change up how we start our song, because often how we start our song is going to set the tone for the song that often keeps carrying through. So if we always start our song the same way, it's going to be common for our songs to end up sounding pretty similar. So if we always are gravitating towards the same instrument and playing in the same way and starting to write the song with the same methodology, we're probably going to end up having results where the songs start to sound the same. We really don't want this. So whether you're new to songwriting or you're somebody who is a more seasoned songwriter, this should help you out to start writing songs from different angles, different starting places, so that you keep inspiration fresh and you don't start to have all your songs start to sound the same. So if you're interested, be sure to pick up that free guide. Link is in the description at songwritertheory.com/free guide. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next time.